Why do you think he might be a good model? Yeah, again, obviously you can't dispute the level of success that he had. Also, just how long he was able to do it. We know that he was very mechanically efficient to be able to throw as much as he did, play at that high of a level as long as he did, right? And so those are going to be some of the things that, again, we want to kind of have some of those similar qualities. We want to identify what they are and obviously try and emulate those on that. So first thing that we always go over is just our pre-pass position. We call it A position. Two reasons we call it A position. Number one, it's the first position that we get to. And number two, for my younger kids, you look like the letter A. You got a nice wide base, hands across the chest. Two easy ways to remember that. As far as the details of A position, we always start with the feet. Like we said, his width is going to be slightly outside shoulder width. That's about as wide as you're going to get. So we're going to have some variations where we're narrower than that, but you really don't want to play much wider than that on that, because you're either going to overstride or you're going to have to add steps to kind of gather yourself and load that back leg. And so that's about the max that we would want to be. We'll kind of bring up some different situations this weekend, probably get into it today for sure, tomorrow, of where you're going to land a lot narrower than that. As far as the feet, a couple of things that we're sticklers about that not a lot of people talk about is we're going to be really precise on just the foot position. There's really three angles that we talk about as far as the foot position. You have neutral, you have duck-footed, you have pigeon-toed. How would you describe his feet here?
Neutral.
Very neutral right there, right? And you would rather be neutral to pigeon-toed. You never really want to be duck-footed on this. And so part of the reason that's important is because we use our back foot to align to our target a lot. And so our rule is, right, we want to be parallel to pigeon-toed toward our target. When you use your back foot, a lot of people refer to what's called the midline. So there's basically an imaginary line going from the middle of your back foot. If you're duck-footed on that, you might be trying to throw here, but your midline is going somewhere else, right? So however your foot is anchored into the ground is going to affect how your hips kind of rotate above that right there, right? So always making sure we have good foot position. Again, even when we're moving, we want to make sure we're kind of maintaining that good neutral foot position, not letting ourselves get sloppy on that. Just watching you and stuff, you look pretty good on that stuff. But that'll be something that I'll just remind you kind of over and over again. You can even see too, the front foot is also closed right there. And the reason that's important is because if that front foot opens, his hips are going to fall out of his back leg. And so if I'm loaded right here and I'm trying to get my weight into my back hip, right, if my toe is open and I'm sloppy with that, my hips kind of naturally fall out right there. Now I'm not able to really coil and stay loaded in that back leg. And so that's something too, is obviously alignment purposes, back leg being parallel is going to be important. But as far as you keeping that load in your back hip and not letting that fall open is going to be, the front foot is going to be critical right there. Not the best angle here, but you can also see that that front foot is staggered slightly off that midline. So like we said, got basically that imaginary line going from the middle of the back foot. That front foot, we know when we land, we want it to be off that midline. We like to just start with it already staggered off that midline. And you can see he has a little bit of a stagger. The way we always describe it is you should be trying to show the target, the front half of your back foot. We never really want to try and show it the heel on that, right? And so we'll go deeper into that, but that's going to be something just to note right now is just that stagger alignment that he has. And then the last thing is he's got a heavy foot and he's got a light foot. Which one do you think is which?
His back foot's heavy.
Yeah, right. So he's got all his cleats in the turf on that back foot, and his left heel is literally out of the ground. We're going to talk a lot about moving on the balls of your feet. For the most part, right, if we're moving and we're dynamic, we're going to be on the balls of our feet, and then we're going to be able to find a full cleat when we need to. But really the left heel, until you throw, is pretty much out of the ground the whole time, right? I'm either moving or, I'm kind of transitioning on that, loading that weight back. And so just, really kind of pay attention to that left foot. But again, when we're actually moving, heels for the most part are going to be out of the ground. Moving up the chain right here, you can kind of see slight bend in the knees, hips are pushed back, chest is slightly forward right there. This is just a universal athletic position. Doesn't matter what we're doing. If we're guarding somebody in basketball, if we're going to run a race right there, we're always going to push our hips back. Chest is going to go forward. That's going to load the strong muscles behind, kind of the posterior chain right there. A lot of times quarterbacks make the mistake of, again, they hear play tall, be tall in the pocket, and now they start to push their hips through, and their head starts to fall back behind them, okay? Yes, we want to play tall right there, but we want to make sure our hips are back behind our heels and the head is floating on the front side of my body right there, right? call it like a universal, like I said, universal athletic position. We call it a hip hinge. You want to maintain a degree of a hip hinge, even in your pre-pass position. As far as his carriage position right there, right, you can see his shoulders, no tension in his traps, nice and relaxed, elbows hanging by his rib cage, both hands close to the football right there. Notice how he has really tight, short levers on that, so that forearm is close to the bicep, the wrists are above the elbows. You want to maintain, you want to start in a compact position, and you want to maintain a compact position as you start to get into your throw. But if you start long, right, you're going to end up long, and you can start short and still end up long, but if you don't start short, right, you got no chance on that, okay? Like we said, both hands close to the ball about chest height right there. One thing that's going to be important, you can even see how, like, he's got both hands close, but that left hand's literally not even on the ball right there.
Yeah.
Not that you can't put both hands on the ball, but this is going to help us, kind of in our separation pattern, which we're going to talk a lot about. And so we might even actually do some drills where you kind of take your left hand off the ball depending on what you're showing us on this, okay? Obviously, if you're in traffic or anything like that, make sure you get both hands on and protect the football. Eyes on the target, hips level, shoulders level. Again, for the most part, we're going to be kind of talking through a lot of different details. We talked about some of them right now. So make sure you look down, check yourself, make sure you're in a good spot. But before you throw, obviously get your eyes back on your target right there, right? All right, getting into the actual throw now. So the first thing that's going to initiate the throw is that front foot pickup right here and that shoulder loading. And so you can see when he picks that front foot up, right, obviously all the weight is going to get into that back leg right there, but also notice kind of how that front foot's happening. We know we started closed right there. He's going to pick it up still slightly closed on this, and it's not going to open until right before he connects with the ground on that. Some guys pick it up and open it immediately, but again, if you open that front foot up, what do the hips do? They fall out right there, right? And so he's got a really short stride right now because he started with that wide base, but if he was narrow, that foot would stay closed longer before right before it kind of touches the ground on that, okay? So that's going to be an important detail on this. The other thing, as far as just the rhythm of the throw, is notice when the front foot steps, watch his front shoulder. So you see how his front shoulder's closing as the front foot steps?
Yeah.
So we load our back leg with our upper body. So as I step to you, right, and my shoulder closes, that's what coils me into that back leg. And you can even see the back knee, right, as I step and the shoulder turns right there. You can see I'm kind of like corkscrewing into that ground right here, and my knee is almost going out. Look at the shape of his back leg.
Yeah.
So it's not caving in right there, it's bowing until he actually rotates on this, right?
Yeah.
But it's going to be the upper body closing when that front foot steps that really gives you that good coil in that back hip. 3 checkpoints that we look at. So obviously, like we said, the front foot picks up, the shoulder closes, we load into that back hip. Now when the front foot gets back into the ground, there's 3 things that we're looking to, again, kind of show us good rhythm, good timing of the throw. One is going to be that foot lands off that midline. So we started staggered to begin with, right? We want to make sure we stay off that line once that foot actually gets into the ground. You can see the front foot, even though he's off the line, is his toe perfectly open or is it still slightly closed?
It's closed.
A little closed right there, right? And so again, wherever your foot is, that's where your hips are going to stop, and your hips are going to go a little bit further than your toes. So if your toe is too open, your hips are going to go too far on that, right? So we want to have that slightly closed toe off the midline. Like we said, the shoulder is already closed right there. You can see the tension lines that are being created in his shirt. He's creating torque. He's creating a lot of, stretch right there. And so you see the tension lines in the shirt. All the muscles, all the soft tissue in your body is doing the same thing right there, right? We're starting to get that stretch. And then the last detail, which is important, is notice when the front foot gets in the ground, the hands are separated, right? So he's broken the hands on this. You don't want to hit the ground, be loaded, and still be connected right there, because right when the foot gets into the ground, that's when we're going to rotate, and if you still got both hands on the ball, your arm's going to lag back, kind of behind you on that. So you want to make sure front foot gets in the ground, we're in a good loaded position, we can rotate, everything can unravel on time right here. And then the last note in this position here is notice like where the head is relative to kind of his body. So the head is still over the back foot as the hips are starting to come forward. We always say kind of hips before nips on this. You want to make sure that the hips are getting ahead right here. You're staying back, and so that way whenever you unravel, you're in a nice vertical position, kind of creating a C shape in your spine right there. Everything's getting up that upper back, able to kind of throw on this. And so getting into that weight transfer a little bit, but that's an angle that I want you to kind of burn into your brain rather than some guys kind of go head first on that, chest kind of finishes down, not in a great position. So you got your A position. You got the good load right there. You got the 3 checkpoints, foot shoulder separation. You got a good posture position where the head's over the back hip. Now we actually get into the rotation right here, right? And so the origin of the rotation comes from where? The hips, right? So the hips are gonna rotate and the body is gonna unravel both kind of above and below the hips. So we're gonna watch that right here. So the front foot's down. Now the hips are gonna rotate. If we watch that back leg, you can see as the hips rotate, that back leg is just going to efficiently kind of roll over right there, right? And so some guys kind of teach, really bringing that leg through, doing stuff like that. That's inefficient right there. As that back hip runs away, we just want to feel that back foot kind of peel off the ground and just tap right there as it flips over on that, right? Notice where his leg stays. We call that your anchor foot right here. So that ball is long gone and that back leg is still where? Way behind him right there, right? And so just like an anchor is going to slow down a boat, that back leg is going to help the hips slow down, which is going to create acceleration up top. There's going to be several different deceleration or moments where like the body comes to a break. That's going to create stacked accelerations up top. That's going to be one of the first ones is the hips. The back foot is an important part of that, okay? Let's see. Watch that front leg right here. So when he lands, gets into the ground, that front knee, is it bent or is it locked out?
It's bent a little bit.
So it's bent right there as he absorbs it, and now as that weight shifts into that front leg, does that knee get taller or shorter? Gets taller. So he's firm into that ground right there, right? I mean, the analogy we use is kind of like a pole vaulter. Pole vaulter is going to be sprinting down that track. It's got all this horizontal momentum. That's what we're doing whenever we stride towards our target. We're getting momentum out towards the target. And then once that front foot gets in the ground, we're able to kind of stop that momentum and get it going up the body just like a pole vaulter would if he sticks that pole down right there, right? And in order to do that, you can't be squishy in that front knee. You got to be firm in it. Now, even though we're firm, moving that energy up, does he lock the knee out? Doesn't lock the knee out. That allows him to keep good posture right here. If he was rotating, if you were to lock that knee out, that's going to break him at the hips. That chest is going to come forward right there, right? And so even though we want to be firm, we want to kind of make sure we're pushing through the ground with that front foot. We don't want to go so far that we end up locking the knee out and the chest falling forward. Let's see. All right, so where do the hips stop? Where are they pointed at whenever the ball's kind of thrown? Right at the target, right? And so like we said, there's 2 things that's kind of determining that. One is where the front foot gets into the ground. Should be right off the midline, toes slightly closed. And then 2, that back hip flipping over, staying back behind. Those 2 things combined is what's going to help the hips come to a sudden stop square to the target. When they come to that sudden stop, that's going to accelerate everything above it, right? The torso and ultimately the shoulders at some point here. So we looked at the lower half right there. Let's look at the upper half now. So front foot gets in the ground, hips rotate, and now you can kind of see that energy move up that spine right there, right? And so like we talked about, there's that C-shaped position that we mentioned earlier on that. So we start in a good position, that head's back, the hips are coming forward, and now as the hips open, that spine unravels and kind of takes him through that big chest position. As that chest continues to open up, that's the shape that we're looking for, where that scap is kind of tucked up right up along that rib cage. You got a nice stretch in your pec right there. The elbow rolls through. That's going to get a lot of kind of sling tension that we're looking for to kind of accelerate that football out. That is a big part of like the mechanics of a throw, right? Again, we're not muscling the ball. We're letting that energy move up the body, up that spine right there, letting the different stretches that are taking place help snap the ball out for us rather than really muscling it. But this is going to be a good shape for us here. As the hips open, the chest opens. Where's the chest pointed once the ball's thrown?
Straight
Square to the target. So just like the front foot stopped the hip square, the back foot helps stop the hip square. What stops the chest square to the target?
His offhand.
Yeah, right, that offhand right there, right? And so we call that your microphone hand. Now, some guys get too stuck with it, like where it's too glued up on you right here. Notice when he separates that offhand, is that elbow right up against the side or does he have space? He's got space. He's giving himself space to rotate inside. His arm's right there. He gets through that big chest position. You can even see that left elbow. Sometimes people are so afraid of like letting that left elbow or that front elbow go. I know you're a righty, or you're a lefty, excuse me. But look where that left elbow goes. Does it go around his rib cage right there? So I would say it does go a little bit around, and we'll show some different examples of this right there. And then once that spine, that C shape releases, where does that arm go? You see how it's going, and then watch when it releases, how it comes back in right there, right? And we got some different clips to kind of show that right here. In fact, I can just pull it up. This is a great one. So separation. Again, he's creating space off the elbows off the rib cage right here. As he's ready to let that chest open, watch that left arm, how it's just going to kind of wrap around the rib cage. That's going to take him through that big chest position. There's that C curve, and then once he snaps it right here, right, it kind of gets back into that microphone. Got another clip here, same thing. This one's a little bit louder. That left arm tucks around. There's that big chest position. And remember, it's the upper spine. When the upper spine snaps, that's what kind of brings that offhand back into that body right there, finishing in that microphone. But again, sometimes I feel like guys get too stuck. They're like blocking themselves, right? You watch pitchers, you watch any of these, javelin throwers, like they're going to get through that shape. And then once they release, then that kind of comes back, into the body right there. Yeah. So a little bit of a nuance that, again, I would say you've probably seen drills where kids are holding towels, kind of pinning up right there, really blocking themselves off. Yes, you do want that front arm to stop your chest, but you also want it to contribute to you getting that energy up that spine and really snapping that out right there, right? So there's a nuance that we want to try and find this weekend here. All right, and like we said, we call that the microphone hand, but now that's the second sudden deceleration. The hip stops square to the target, that accelerates everything up that spine. The chest stops square to the target, now that's going to accelerate that back arm right there, and creating some of that acceleration that we're looking for. Let's look at the back arm here. So hips open, chest opens. Watch this relationship right here. So when he steps, he's just creating space. We call that flapping the elbows off the rib cage right there. He's just getting it off. Is that left arm running back with him, or is it just getting off? Yeah, so it's more breaking at the midline right here. Again, I'll show you, we'll go back, we'll look at the Rogers clip, we'll look at Drew Brees, we'll look at some of these guys, but some guys kind of run back right here, right? We don't want to run back. One, because that's going to give us, we're not going to have space to rotate inside of it. Two, a lot of times you run back, you start getting long in your back arm too. Again, we want to stay short and compact right here. If I just get space off right here, as the hips rotate, watch what this back scap kind of does right there. So the hip rotates, everything's moving up that spine, but you can see how that ball and that shoulder blade start to work with that. And now that ball goes straight up right there in a good position. So he's maintained that inside 90 type position. He started compact. As he rotates, he stayed compact. And then once the hips are kind of through, you can see all that tension. Where's his front shoulder? Is his shoulder open or is it still closed?
Still closed.
So that's what's building up the pressure of the throw, right? And when people talk about hip-shoulder dissociation, that kind of stuff, to me it's less about like slamming your hips or doing anything crazy with that, and more about just being disciplined of when you let your front shoulder go, right? If you're good, you're going to grab the ground with your feet, your hips are going to start to go. Some kids are too early, they let everything go open right there, and some kids kind of jam their hips and like their upper body's not timed up with it. So we don't do DAC dance. I'm sure you've seen the DAC dance before. The reason we don't like the DAC dance is because it has no timing with the upper body, right? As this is starting to go, that should also kind of be, in rhythm with that. And so I get the purpose of that drill, but we try and communicate that a little bit differently, to be honest with you. This would be another position that, again, I want you to kind of melt into your brain right here, really take a snapshot of that, because that is kind of like the ideal tension position before we let those shoulders release. That back scap is set, that ball's in a good position, so when the shoulders do open up, which again, that left arm is going to be a part of it, so watch that left arm kind of go around that rib cage right there. He's using that left arm to help open him up. But because that ball and that scapula is in a good position right here, the moment the shoulders open, that elbow is able to get through. So if you look at where his elbow is right now, it's below the shoulder line.
Yeah.
As he opens up, it's able to climb above the shoulder line. But again, that's your scapula, your shoulder blade tucking up along your rib cage, which helps climb that elbow right there. And so that's what's going to get everything nice, and because your shoulders are a relatively loose joint, right? It's the most mobile joint in the body. So if you don't do a good job really getting that pressed up against that rib cage, that would be another area where all that energy you created would just kind of dissipate out of it. A lot of people would call that an energy leak. But if you're really compact right here and nice and tight, now all that energy can get through that loose joint and ultimately into the football. But that's why that C shape is so important, because that's showing that scap nice and tucked on that, okay? So we're below the shoulder line here, above the shoulder line there. Again, we're going to use different slots. This is our default slot right here. Obviously, we'll use some lower slots and stuff like that, but as a general rule, we want to be an elbow above shoulder line. This is where we're going to get to kind of our last deceleration. So you can see how much the elbow is moving in space right here. But watch, it's going to hit, and it's going to come to a stop, right? So elbow's traveling. It gets to what we call our extension point, which is going to be somewhere between the chin and the eyes. He's got great overhead mobility, so he's closer to his eyes right there. You don't have to be that high. That elbow hits a wall. Once that elbow stops right there, that forearm releases, right? That's the last deceleration to get that final acceleration, which is the forearm. Technically, the wrist is the last real stop right there. But that's where you can see the hips stop, the chest stops, the elbow stops, and now all of a sudden, like, we're whipping the ball out kind of through those intentional decelerations. So burn this into your brain too. Look at his hand position, or a couple of things. Number one, his arm. Is there any bend to it, or is it fully locked out?
It's locked out.
So that's like true extension right there, right? And you want that because a lot of guys, they'll kind of come through the ball will leave their hand while they're still kind of bent right here, and that's right when you were getting all your speed, right? The fastest part of the throw is that last little bit. So you really want the ball in your hand as you're gaining that speed, and you want it snapping it out late. Now, in order to do that, a lot of guys teach pronating and stuff, so you have pronation where you flip this way, you have supination going the other way. You really want to, as you're extending, you want to be supinating with your forearm, and you're going to get into that claw-shaped position that he's in right there. That's what's going to allow you to get to a full extension. If you were coming through and you pronated, right, the ball's going to leave your hand while you're still bent on that. So that's kind of something that's a little bit different too. So you really want to be going that way, and then once the ball leaves your hand, your shoulder will internally rotate. So you will finish palm down, but it's not happening at the forearm. It's all happening at the shoulder right there. That's kind of one thing that I feel like a lot of people get wrong a little bit. The other reason that's important, do you golf at all?
A little bit.
A little bit, right? So obviously you know what a slice is, you know what a draw is. When you pronate, you're technically throwing a slice, because where are you pushing the nose of the ball?
Away.
You're pushing it away, right? Whereas when you supinate, you're closing the nose of the ball. So you're bringing everything back into that same line, right? And so just like you know, again, can you play golf and hit a slice? Yeah, but you have to literally, like, if I know it's going to finish right, or in your case, finish left, where are you going to aim? You're going to aim way to the right to compensate for that, right? Well, you're doing that subconsciously, potentially throwing the ball too. If everything you do naturally kind of finishes this way, well, then you've probably calibrated to that to some degree, and now you start stepping a little bit right at your target because you know it's going to go back. Whereas in an ideal world, right, we would like to be able to step where we want to go and bring that kind of back into that same line. The other thing that you're going to see show up, the best on-the-move throwers all close the nose right there, because now you're on the move. You got to be extra sharp with just your extension and bringing the ball where you want, because you can't step to where you want anymore, right? But that's one thing that, again, is maybe a little bit new right there. All right, so ball leaves the hand right here, like we said. Once he extends, shoulder's going to internally rotate, so he'll finish palm down, and then he's just going to kind of chop his target in half diagonally is the way that we describe it. If you're too vertical, you're gonna pronate right there. You're gonna finish over. So ideally, you come through in that sweet spot, which is gonna be about that 3/4 slot, and you're chopping the target in half diagonally on that. Okay. So you can see when he comes through, he's gonna finish somewhere between his elbow and his pocket. Right, and there he is right there, just kind of below that front elbow right here. That's what you want, where it's out, snaps out, and then it kind of almost goes across a little bit right there, right? So not straight down or anything like that, but really snap out and just chop that target in half diagonally. We talked about posture earlier right there. We talked about the importance of the front knee not locking out so that way you don't break the hips. Again, part of the reason why posture is so important, you don't really have any baseball background, right?
Put
A little bit on that,
yeah.
right? And so, again, we get a lot of pitchers, obviously. One of the main differences between quarterback and pitchers is pitchers are always throwing where? Where are they throwing?
Down.
They're throwing down, right? They're on a mound. The catcher's squatted right there. So everything they're doing is throwing down. Whereas quarterbacks, we never throw down. We're either throwing flat or we're throwing up.
Yeah.
Right? So the posture by far is going to be the main difference of kind of what is, between quarterback and pitcher on this. And so we say that your chest line shows your trajectory line. And so if you drew an arrow right out from his chest right here, it would be the same line that ball is coming out on that. If we look at the next clip right here, as he unravels, he gets into that C shape right there. Now that arrow would be pointed up. That ball is going up on this, right? And so that is ideal, kind of what we want. If we're good at our extension, everything we talked about already, well then now our chest line again should show where that trajectory of that ball is going to go on that. Okay. I want to show this clip just again real fast. Again, notice where the hands break. That left hand doesn't run back with him at all. That front hand just breaks right off of it. He's got space. Elbows kind of in line with the shoulders right here. As the body rotates, the spine's going to unravel. That scap is going to set. The left arm is going to help him open his chest up right there. And then once he snaps it, right, that left arm's going to be waiting for him to create that good deceleration. Watch that one, same thing. Here's Drew Brees doing it. Extra slow motion. So hands break right at the middle right there. He doesn't run back. I don't love his left hand, but you can see him using that left elbow to get through that big kind of chest position, that C shape. He's not as good with his head position. He lets his head come forward a little bit more right there. But you can see once he opens up into that big C shape right there, that left hand's going to be waiting to kind of help stop, create that deceleration in that chest on that. And then you can still see too kind of how those bottom three fingers are the ones creating the spin. So if we're going to supinate, that means we're creating spin with the bottom half of the hand. If we pronate, that means we're creating spin with the top half of the hand. Here's a good clip to kind of show that as well. So watch kind of where he's at right there, and then watch these bottom three fingers. They're the ones that, way too fast. They're the ones that are really going to kind of roll through. And again, you even think about your grip right there. Which fingers are on the laces, the top or the bottom?
Top one. Or bottom.
The bottom ones, right? So those are the ones you're designed to roll through that, to create friction, to create that spin right there. Plus you want to close the nose on the ball. So like that's the shape. It's that claw shape that we're looking for. Index finger stays long. It's the last one off the football. And like I said, once he snaps out, it's the shoulder that's going to decelerate and roll everything over, but it's not the forearm on that, okay? Last little detail right here. Again, this is a good video for it. Kind of watch how he accepts the ground with that left foot. Is he landing heel first, or is he landing ball of the foot first?
The ball.
Yeah, right. And you can even see, too, how it's like slightly closed. He's kind of digging in with that left foot right here. And then once the hips rotate, right, he's kind of pushing through the ground. You can even see him pivot off that left foot, slide right there. Not everyone's got as big of a pivot as he does. Brady's got a little bit. Not necessarily on that clip, it's not as loud. That clip, it's a little bit louder. You can see that little bit of pivot. There's a big pivot right there. You saw that one. Watch this one right here. Right, so again, just that ability to put force into the ground, move it up. The back leg's going to be important, but the front leg's also going to be important. Kind of just how you set that foot in the ground initially. Let's see. One thing that we'll talk about is kind of scope eyes. So we know that we wanted to be in that good hip hinge, that good posture position right there. The way you position your head is going to help you kind of keep the spine in the angle that you want. Watch Brady here. So you can see the tilt in his eyes right there. So that's what we're looking for. Again, ideally, we want to be kind of more on the inside of our body, not the outside of our body here. So we call that head position like scope eyes, right? If you were staring down a scope, that would be the angle that you want. When you watch some of these guys warm up, Rogers is a prime example of this. You can see how tilted he is, even just like his stripe of his helmet.
Yeah.
Right? Like, look how he's at. Now, again, he's still ball above the head right there. So just because he's tilted this way doesn't mean he can't have a good arm slot on that. But a lot of times guys will warm up lower to kind of find it come off the hand, find that good position right there, and then they'll go play. But that's like a good drill to kind of help you find a lot of the sensations that you're looking for. And then here's just some of the scope eye examples of in case kids couldn't make a relationship to that. But for the most part, that's kind of the gist. Those are the terms that we're going to be using. We're going to look at your clip here now. But anything that we talked about right there that didn't make a ton of sense, is drastically different than maybe what you've heard before, or what was
this?
Okay, so
I've always done that because I've always heard that this is how you get their spin with this.
Yeah, and you can.
I've never heard of that.
So you can, like, that's the thing, is you can create spin, but it's at the cost of a slice, potentially, right there. And that's the thing, like, if you think about the spectrum of, like, if I'm going to have a spectrum of arm slots, I can start here at that 3/4. Anything lower than that, like, think about if you were going to throw a sidearm. Would you turn over like that, or would you have to turn here? Right? And so, like, if you think about, okay, what is going to give you the most arm slots to be adaptable in a game, it's going to be you learning how to do that, because I can be all the way down here and I can throw a good ball, or I can get back up here. Now, if I go past that, now I get into where I'm only doing this, but also think about what that does to my head position, right? If I turn over, I got to fall right there. Whereas if I get here, now it keeps me a little bit more stable, which is where I don't have it in this one. Maybe I do. Let's see. So watch when he throws on the run. And again, he's like one of the best ones as far as creating spin with the bottom three. Look how his head doesn't move.
Yeah, it stays.
I mean, it's like an owl. You know what I'm saying? He's violently rotating right there, but he's able to keep that head perfectly still. That's going to the right. Here's him going to the left. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what I'm saying. But it's all based on his ability to create spin here, because if he did it this way, now all of a sudden he's moving and his head's going to be moving as he's trying to make his throw. So if he's moving a lot and has a lot of momentum, if you can keep this still because of how you can create spin off the ball, it's going to make you more accurate on the move. And obviously he's one of the best on the move all time. Mahomes is another one. Let me see if I have a Mahomes clip.
There on the bottom left is not Mahomes.
Yeah, I don't know. This is like a straight ahead. I wanted to get one him going sideways. You can see again, he's still right there too.
It's like the Drew Aller pass that just happened.
Right.
In the Big Ten championship. Well,
Through a pick.
Right.
Cotton or Orange Bowl.
But yeah, that's going to be, again, not only does it give you more, like a bigger percentage of the spectrum of slots if you learn how to do it this way, it's really going to help you on the move because of how everything's able to stay still when you have so much momentum going different directions.
what are just for his sake? What are drills? I'm sure maybe we'll learn them to learn that.
Yeah, so we got some different things. So one thing for sure that's easy, that you don't have to buy any equipment or anything like that, is anything underhand. So one thing that we'll do is we'll get the ball, we'll take our wrist, put it below our waist, and we'll just literally work wrist curls up this way. You can work underhand throws, you can work low slot type throws. Anything that is underhand is going to force you to find that sensation, and then you have to take that sensation and be able to apply it even when you go back above, kind of over the shoulder.
Does that help with wrist angle stuff? Like when cause if I get like that, cause I threw it all like this last year.
Yeah.
So that I feel like does that force?
So one thing
to
that you're showing me there is you have a very broken wrist.
That's how I threw last year, and I've been trying to.
Yeah,
get this.
so we got something to kind of clean that up too. But you think about if I'm gonna say if I was gonna punch you right there and I actually wanted energy to transfer through, if I was flimsy with that wrist, right, I could punch you as hard as I can. But if that wrist breaks as I make contact, is that gonna be as much force, right? It's gonna kind of break on that. So as you're coming through that football right there, and you let that wrist break, you're doing the same exact thing. All that force is not getting through the football because you're kind of just letting it break. You really want to hold that pressure by keeping that wrist stable and then letting it snap off the fingers right there, right? But in reality, you shouldn't allow it to go this way.
Yeah.
It should hold firm, and then as it releases, it will go more into that wrist, flexion position right there.
Yeah.
But this is an analogy I use a lot. The throw should almost feel like if I was gonna flick you and I just do this, try and use muscular force to flick you, I'll never create any power. But if I actually build pressure up and then I release it, now all of a sudden I can create a lot more power on that.
Yeah.
That's what the throw is. You're trying to hold everything and build up pressure, build up, and then release it at the end so everything snaps off. And again, Rodgers is kind of the epitome of that, which is why people are like, man, it just looks like a flick.
Yeah.
It just looks like a snap, that kind of thing. Because he's just the best one at in all the different areas that you can hold pressure, he's able to do that. Whether that's the front shoulder, whether that's the wrist right there, right? He's able to just move that tension up his body, hold that pressure, and then release that pressure, and it snaps out right there, right? And the wrist is going to be a big one for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, 100%. If you can learn to create that spin the way that we want right there, that's also going to help you kind of maintain that good position. But we got some other things that are just going to help teach you kind of hold that a little bit. Now, with that said, that's not always a super comfortable process, right? And so that's one thing going into this weekend, which is also part of why you didn't mean it this way, but I didn't know if he was wanting to go compete at the combine or anything that.
No.
Which again, you can compete at that combine. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah.
But I want you to okay, here's our time to work on our habits and really think about that stuff. So I didn't want you to go one day where it's we're telling you all these things to try out, and then you go try and perform, and you're halfway in, halfway out. And that was the thing.
Yeah, we're not doing that. Take it to AT&T Stadium.
That's it. And so, and that'll be good. I'm actually interested. I want the field. I'll talk to y'all, I guess Sunday, because we'll have our stuff early. And then what time is it tomorrow? Will y'all go to that? It'll be after our stuff.
Well, they said the competition starts at 2:30, and then it goes until 8:30.
So then Sunday, y'all have to give me the review on how it was, or if it was good or not. Again,
it depends if we stay. If we show up and it's if it's a little half baked, we'll probably just leave. But,
I think
because it's everything. It's not just QBs. It looks like everything. It looks like all the positions.
They'll have some good talent at other positions. They'll have probably good talented people at quarterback, but I bet they won't have very polished quarterbacks there. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
Again, just based on the clip that you said.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
It's our ticket to AT&T
That's
Stadium.
it. No, it's good. Yeah, you need that. It'll be fun. I'm actually. Have you been before to AT&T?
No, that's why we wanted to go.
Okay.
That's why it's on the list of
I'm
hey,
not a huge fan of it, so I'm interested to hear what y'all's opinion is on. It's obviously massive. It's home of the Cowboys.
It'd be interesting to compare it to Lucas Oil.
I like Lucas Oil.
Which
so we'll
Lucas
go
Oil
there.
is in the Midwest. It's Lucas Oil is the premier indoor.
So again, obviously bigger, but doesn't have near the. It's not. I don't know. Lucas Oil is a better stadium to me.
Yeah.
Lucas Oil is awesome.
It is
Sounds
awesome.
so cool.
Honestly, the Pacers. I haven't been inside of it, but we had a hotel right outside the Pacers arena, and it looks like a nice arena too. I haven't been
We've
inside.
never been to the Pacers. Been to the Cavs.
Because when we go to Combine,
Cavs is
it's all in the same area.
Yeah, you're right there.
Right next to it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we had a hotel right across the street from the Pacers thing, and I was like, damn, that's really nice. And obviously we go into Lucas Oil for that, but it's a great stadium.
Yeah.
It's also where Peyton played, so that's my guy.
We'll give you a comparison on Sunday.
There you go. I went to a Denver game last year. Mile High is great too. So yeah, I don't know. It's just I'm not a huge fan. It's obviously big. It's Jerry World. It's Cowboys, but you'll go in there and you'll literally be man, like the design of this doesn't really make like a ton of sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So, anyways,
Interesting.
I'm to hear that. But so this is a big thing for you. Felt like that really stood out to you. Anything else really stick out?
Also the front foot. I mean, Jimmy's really emphasized that stagger, but I feel like when I go stagger, I stagger. When I set the throw, I feel like I have my front foot open a little bit.
I got you. So you
like,
kind of find that duck-footed position.
Yeah, a little bit. And the front foot, I'm definitely more pigeon-footed with my back foot. It's just my front foot would find the
Yeah,
open a little bit when I sit there.
yeah. And so like again,
Yeah, like that.
and that's like when you're just like standing
Yeah.
before you even get into it.
Mhm.
Yeah, we'll kind of hold that, and again, learning to kind of hold that closed till right before it accepts right there, right? If we go back to like this clip a lot. Nope. Like you can see as like, because this one's a bigger step because he's in a narrow position. So remember we talked about that narrow position?
Yeah.
You're going to get narrow when you land at the top of your drop. And so that's where he's going to reset. So he's narrow right there. And then that's where as he strides out, like look how long the foot stays closed until right before it touches down. Whereas again,
Yeah.
some kids, it's like right when they start to go, the knee opens up, the toe opens up right there, and he's literally just letting that hang closed, and then right before it accepts the ground, and even how it accepts the ground is still kind of inside edge of that toe is dug in. Everything snaps out, all the things we were already talking about. You can see that left arm again helping him unravel through that position. But that's my guy. That's my favorite thrower for sure. Favorite quarterback, probably Peyton or Brady. But we don't have much Peyton in there because Peyton's not our throwing model. So he's our quarterback model. He's a passing model. Like we want to emulate his habits as far as reading coverages, accuracy, anticipation. But like relative to some of the guys we were watching, he was a pretty limited thrower. So that's its own conversation too. Is like you can admire someone as a thrower, and they might not be a great quarterback, and you could have someone who's a great quarterback, and they might not be. You know, like Phillip Rivers is a great example of this. Like great quarterback, he's not who like people are trying to replicate as a thrower on that stuff. So just kind of an interesting topic. Let's look at you real quick. Get out there. Start with this one. All right, so let's just look at that A position on that. So how would you grade your starting position?
It's too narrow.
So,
wider.
and remember, the feet outside shoulder width is as wide as we want to be. So I'm actually okay with that, right? Because I have a bigger issue with you being too wide, because now everything's going to be like overstride or an extra step to kind of get back into a position where you